Hi, I'm Andy Neuherz, Director Vertical Solutions for Western Europe. Today I want to talk to you about how cloud and mobility are driving the next generation type of networks. As always, you can take a look at enterprise.huawei.com to learn more about our products and solutions. So, big question will be, are your networks ready? What do we mean by that? What are the trends? What you can see here. On the left side, you see cloud computing as the big topic nowadays and what will happen for IT services by 2020. It shows that there is an increased uptake on cloud infrastructure and services and the percentage of the total worldwide IT expenditure. You see it from 2012 to 2020 and you see that the IT expenditure regarding on cloud services, it's 27% of the 770 something billion US dollar. So a very big market. The trends you see now and today, basically 2012, this year, 2013, is the data center and virtual desktop. It moves further over the next coming years into virtualization generally and software-defined networking. And in 2020 or around 2020, you will see the software-defined everything type of approach. How is that combined with the mobility approach? What you see in the mobility area is there's a big increase into mobile and mobility of people into companies and at home, right? Personal devices are driving that one. And the widespread use of personal devices brought the bring your own device theme. And what you see here from a research from Gartner, that basically now or next year, we can discuss that, is the overtake of mobile devices in the infrastructure. Compared to the fixed devices, which have been the higher percentage in the earlier years, and the mobile devices will be the big amount of devices compared from nowadays onwards, or 2014, how it's seen here in the graph. What are those challenges brought by cloud and mobility? On the left side, you see the local interactions people are used sitting at a fixed desktop connected to each other and going into a kind of remote environment where you have the private or public cloud and your data center connected via internet or LAN infrastructure, and you only have the interaction. Now you all know the local area network type of concept, right? Where you basically have a certain bus in your computer being expanded into the local area network. What do you get by that? Your storage mainly and your printing shared into your environment. And with the virtualization and with the cloud and virtual desktop, you really have a complete computer bus in your infrastructure. You only get the display, your mouse, your keyboard interaction on your remote location, and the processing, the storage and everything is into the cloud. With that, of course, you get certain additional new challenges. And a survey which has been done by KPMG, but you can talk to customers and your partners and service providers as well. All of them have the same feedback you will get. The consistent experience, meaning the user experience, the flawless type of working is the number one concern, quickly followed by security issues, right? The data needs to be secure, the communication needs to be secure. Of course, there are some other concerns CIOs and people have, like functional reliability and the like. But the number two big concerns are experience, consistent experience, and acceptable experience, right? Bad experience, if it's consistent, will not solve the issue. And of course, security as the number 1 and 2 challenges. If we look further, what do you see in the market nowadays? There are quite some organizations going into the virtualization, into the cloud, in the virtual desktop. What you see here on the left diagram is that people start to implement VDIs, and they do it like we saw it in the past quickly as well. Quick and dirty is the typical word here. So when you start small, you have a quite good experience, and then you roll it out without putting the right infrastructure and the right resources in place, and people start to get a, let's say, not so good experience. You see it on that picture here is with the VDI and let's say a desktop or a video on the upper left, you see the nice picture, and on the bottom right, you see with the scale, and without implementing the right infrastructure, you see the pixelation or, longer delay or whatever you can experience in that area. And that's basically deteriorating the experience of the user. And that's, of course, challenging the infrastructure and the companies who implement it that way, because you will have unhappy users and it will generate, let's say, a lower productivity compared to before. So it needs to be done consistently right from the beginning, that you have the consistent good user experience on the first side. On the right diagram, what do you see here? You see here a study done by, let's say, competition from our area, which shows the private and public cloud and what's the impact on security issues. You see in a private cloud environment, you have, let's say, a small amount of security threats impacting the infrastructure compared to public. I do think that's quite obvious for public infrastructure. That's more attractive to hackers and the like. On the other side, or not on the other side, but below of that, what you see here is a study done by Network World as well, is that by implementing a virtual infrastructure, by implementing cloud services, you have less infrastructure attacks before compared to afterwards. And it's a dramatic increase. This is, of course, supporting the concerns we have raised before, right? So if we have 2 incidents a month on denial of service attacks originally, and now you implement a public-private cloud infrastructure, you have 10 times the incidents. Of course, you need to check out and make your network even more secure than before, because you do not want to impact the security on your data nor the experience of your users in your infrastructure. The other part, what you will find out into the mobility aspect, is that if it's widely growing and not well planned and architected from the beginning, users will have different type of experiences. What we feel here and what we see talking to customers and companies we work with, that if they just do the typical WLAN infrastructure in the sense of, let's just connect some access points, that the consistent Wi-Fi infrastructure is only providing a good service into the headquarter area, and then if you go further on, you do not have the same wireless or mobile experience. People going into a meeting room and don't have the same connectivity, or not all of the people in the meeting room have the connectivity through the wireless infrastructure. Or when you support remote office, people do not have the infrastructure where they are working to support a consistent and good wireless infrastructure, or at home. So compared to public and private wireless LAN infrastructures, people have different type of experiences. Of course, not everything you can impact as a company, you can't influence, but what we see more and more, the build out of mobile infrastructures will provide better user experience. You can drive that in your own intranet type of environment with a very good planning. You can drive it in talking to your business partners, in the sense that the infrastructure needs to be upgraded and provide that type of consistent connectivity. You need to talk to governmental departments, that they support the further rollout of a good wireless infrastructure to provide the nowadays working behavior of people into that environment. The other part of the mobility, what we discussed before, is the security aspect. Now, if we go to a fixed environment, and here you have some analysis from our company, what we have been doing as well. We have been rolling out wireless infrastructure for quite a while internally, but before that, we do have a fixed infrastructure, and we did security policy and network upgrades and changes in a, let's say, overlookable environment. You had once or twice a year where you needed to adjust parameters in your network. So that was quite okay, I would say. You could do that manually, you could do that statically. There was no big issue in that. And if you look at the environment, yes, you had around 1,000 plus type of nodes, and you had a certain amount, although you see here 32,000 security policies which have been manually implemented, but they have been implemented, let's say, on the go, so they have been growing, and they have not been changed a lot, right? A couple of times a year, that was manageable. Now, if you go into the mobile area, when you have a lot of mobile users and mobile usage of your infrastructure, then policy changes you have and you experience are dramatically increasing. If we look at it in our infrastructure, we have around 200 to 300 policy changes which need to be processed every month. With some of the policy changes even touch a big amount of devices. So in our infrastructure, what we're having is more than 100 firewalls spread all over the infrastructure and all over the countries as an international organization. Now, this is something what you do not want to do manually anymore, nor do you want to have it statically, because that will impact the user experience. And of course, because of human failure, whatever kind of influence from the, let's say, human portion part here, it will increase the security risk of your infrastructure too. The other part is technology. What are technology, what we have seen in the past? First of all, the standards have been dramatically increased in the sense of new standards evolving, addressing all the different issues you see into the internet. On the top graph, you see the IDF RFCs outcoming for over the last decade and more. And yes, a lot of companies, including our company, we have been influencing the RFCs in the sense of generating new RFCs to be used for everybody. And what we see here is that it basically explodes over the last couple of years. And then the bottom side you see a study done by Network World as well is what is the impact on product development and services you deploy, right? If you want to implement a new service in your infrastructure, that in average will take you around 6 months. If you need a new product, including new features, that probably provides you a 12 months period from the beginning to the product launch and the delivery. But if you need a new product with new, let's say, chips, right, where you need to develop new ASICs and the like, that at least takes you 18 months, in average 36 months plus, right? So the impact of new standards, and when that materializes into compatible products onto the market, can go up to 3+ years. So that's a complete big change compared to before, where you had, let's say, less IFCs you need to follow, less standards you wanted to implement. And nowadays, with the big changes here and the big increase of standards and solutions on the way forward, it is slowing down from a product cycle point of view. So if we combine what I have been discussing before, experience is the one impact, so you need to provide a consistent experience, and you want that in the sense of that you have the operation capabilities, operations and maintenance in a simple and easy way, so taking out the complexity of the operations. It needs to be more than secure, and even more secure than before, because with the, let's say, opening of the infrastructure, with the distributed type of infrastructure, with a public and private cloud combination, you increase the security risk of your infrastructure. And finally, you want to have your investment protected. I showed just in the slide before how long it can take with a new product. And then when you invest into a new product, you need to make sure that it's the right product to support the experience and security challenges you have on the way forward. So it would take not another 3 years that you get the next choice for the product to implement into your infrastructure. How do we see the solutions to that? Well, part of it can be solved by a software-defined networking. And software-defined networking has already been used in certain areas of a, let's say, CIO environment or a carrier environment. So where do you see the challenges, or where do we see the challenges for the CIOs? The first part, or the first two parts, which already have been addressed, are in a wide area networking. So SDN has already been implemented into wide area networking infrastructure to provide a better and efficient bandwidth usage, because as we know, bandwidth is quite expensive in a wide area network. And in the other part where you already see SDN influencing is in the data center type of networking, to better virtualize usage of the storage and processing capabilities. So that's, I would say, is already although still in the infinity environment, but already kind of experienced environment for CIOs and companies and carriers of the SDN technology. If we look at it further, we just address what I have been discussing and laying out before. The complex policies which cloud and private public cloud environments and the mobile environment for your users and the management of the policies, if that goes into an SDN environment, that provides you the access to the network anywhere, anytime, but the possibility to drive that in a easy manage capability. The other one is the security challenge. So you drive the security into the sense of the software-defined networking, where you have the capability to be proactive and agile in defining and driving your security into your infrastructure, and in the operation and management challenges, so that you do not have the need for increased staffing or increased difficulty in driving your network to provide all those things what your users demand, but that it makes it for you easier to maintain and operate your infrastructure. And with all this one, when you apply the right SDN architecture to your campus environment extended into the cloud area, you should have the solution by the SDN architecture. I will show you one by one in which areas those SDN impacts from the stuff what I have shown before. The first one is the cloud. What does it mean? If you go in the cloud environment in your enterprise infrastructure into the SDN, and we call it here nobility, so don't get confused with nobility and mobility. It's on purpose. So it makes your infrastructure, let's say, noble, right? It makes it a little bit better in that sense. You still have the typical devices if it's your switches and routing, but what is separated here? You have a campus controller, how we call that. That's basically the device which interfaces to the cloud applications and down to the infrastructure. That's basically the central device, of course redundant and the like, which provides standard interfaces and APIs to communicate to the applications on the top, and uses the typical and used, let's say, protocols, what you normally already are aware of nowadays, like OpenStack and alike, to talk to the devices, to the main devices into the environment, what you see here. And those main devices would be LAN switches, firewalls, routing, and the like. And then at the bottom, you see the zero configuration edge node. A zero configuration in a sense means that you have your access switches or access points and you do not need to touch them, and they get the configuration out of the intelligent SDN architecture completely controlled. With that type of environment where you have the abstraction from the networking infrastructure to the cloud architecture with the controller, you provide the capability to make it in an abstract configuration, easy communication to the devices, still using the typical protocols, still using IP as the communication method from the devices to each other or from the data over the network. But that abstraction provides you the easy management and operations to provide the better usage of the resources in your infrastructure. The second one, what I want to show here is what's going on with the efficient services and why you need to have a ubiquitous network into the access area. We just said before that mobile usage is on the rise, and mobile usage is not just into the office environment where people move from one room to the other one, but if you go into a more international type of environment, people are flying from one place to the other one. And as you can see here in the example, I provided you, of course, our headquarters, Shenzhen. I show you Barcelona because we will present that at the Gartner event. And then, of course, Silicon Valley. So basically, over the world, people are flying from one office to the other one, and they want to have their environment. They are used to their infrastructure they're using. Now, one way is that you backhaul everything to one area, but the more, let's say, dynamic and the better efficient usage of the environment would be if the infrastructure and the resources move with the person. What do you mean by that, right? You have your virtual desktop infrastructure, your virtual machines in your data center. And when the person moves from Shenzhen to Barcelona, the virtual infrastructure of that user moves to the closest data center in your campus environment, in your international company environment. And then the person moves further to the Silicon Valley, and again, his infrastructure moves there too. That provides the consistent and good user experience of the user because he is always using the closest data center for his infrastructure and for his access. And with the SDN environment, you have the capability to provide that quick moves of resources. And resources here is not only access, it's the complete data center, the virtual desktop environment, without any interference by the user. So the user does not really know where his data is. He accesses the network and his data is close by and he can use it anywhere he goes to. Now, having said that, that's of course a very nice environment people would like to work for and work in. But on the other hand, I already discussed before that with the virtualization, with the cloud environment in the public and private network, the attack stress and the challenges you have in the security infrastructure is, of course, let's say, growing in a big time too. We could even say it's growing exponentially, right? So from your security center point of view, the same controller or the same network control into the SDN architecture discussed before will provide you with the management of the distributed devices taking care for security. So if that would be anti-denial of service attack, gateways, next generation firewall, sandboxed environment, secure virtual network type of environment, all those type of devices are virtualized and controlled and driven by the SDN controller, taking care that all the security and policy collaboration commands, configurations and the like are distributed into the environment. Coming back to the example before, when the user moves from Shenzhen to Barcelona, that he still can access the network, but his policy and his profile is now implemented in the Barcelona type of configuration of the infrastructure of your company. And when the user moves on into the Silicon Valley environment, that he gets with the profile the same security access and a security policy implemented in that type of environment. But in the meantime, his profile has been taken away from the Barcelona infrastructure because he is not there anymore, providing the resources in the Barcelona network for other users coming there. That, of course, needs to become automatic, and that needs to be easy to maintain, and that's what's provided by the SDN architecture in that area. So if you want to abstract it a little bit easier from a picture, you could even say that one network in the future equals one device. So a network is virtualized into one device. So you basically have the super switch, what you see here on the right, and you have your core users connected and everything works into that type of environment of the super switch. In reality and physically, of course, you do have your different devices still implemented in your network. You have your aggregation switches, you have your core switches, you have your access switches, you have your access points and the like. But when you picture that into one device, you can easily grasp that that's, of course, easier to manage because you see it as one device. So manage and operation is a lot easier. On the other side as well, because it's only one device in your virtual environment, it significantly improves your reliability as well, because you picture that as one device, and as you know, when you have one device and according redundancy and reliability implemented, you can easily grasp that that's a highly reliable type of environment. Now, we have said that the cloud and mobility is one of the tasks what people are driving on the way forward with the SDN architecture. But having said that, you want to have the user experience and you still need to implement the security policies of the companies. Now, with the resource usage and when you are working in a cloud environment, in a virtualized environment, it makes it easy that for, let's say, additional resources, for transitions, for costs, whatever kind of driving argument you're using, from the private cloud infrastructure using a public cloud infrastructure as well. Already people use that in the personal environment a lot, just to name a few, like a Dropbox environment as an extended storage of people, or as an extended storage when you are traveling, that you have all your data around. The same can happen to companies. But if you use that as a company, you of course want to make sure that it's a secured environment in the sense of what moves from your private infrastructure to a so-called public infrastructure. And that's public and private cloud environment here. Now, you can, let's say, make rules and write big letters to everybody, what document is allowed to go to the public infrastructure and what document is not allowed to go to the public infrastructure. Difficult. Some people don't read it, some people forget about it, some people are just into too much stress, so they do not think about it when they do something. So human error, it doesn't even need to be on purpose, can happen easily here. What we do suggest in that environment, and because to be able to implement the policy, what you need to have in a secured infrastructure is to have a cloud gateway. And this cloud gateway provides the installation of the rules, the policies the company has set up. So what does it do? Easy explained. You allow to the company Dropbox as an external storage, but the cloud gateway, because of the security and policies enforced, will make sure that only those documents which are for public usage anyhow can be stored in the public storage area, and all the private documents like, the price list or the calculations, what you're using for the margin of your products and the like, they will not be allowed to be stored on the cloud outside of your company. So with that, the user is not anyhow anymore influencing what he can store where, and he needs to think, is that now a secure breach or not? He will just store it on Dropbox, and the cloud gateway will take care that that Dropbox is public or private cloud environment. That makes it for the user easier, that makes it more efficient, and that makes the company environment more secure. And the other part what I need to explain to you as well is, because with the new infrastructure, with the hybrid type of infrastructure what people are using, and the experience people need to have in a mobile cloud networked environment is a lot of more video communication, a lot more real type of communication goes on. And because of the network traffic growing, you need to make sure that the important and, let's say, performance impacting type of communication still goes smoothly. There are different ways of doing that in the past. One is a kind of out-of-band measurement, like a bidirectional forward detection or network quality assurance, what we have been implementing in our boxes as well. But with the virtualization of the infrastructure, you need to go the next step. You need to go in-band into the communication and need to make the packet conversion algorithm, how we call it. It's a proprietary protocol we're using into our devices and chips, which makes sure that the in-band communication is watched accordingly and make sure that that type of in-band communication goes smoothly. Of course, it depends what you want to do here. So it is important for video communication that the JIT and the packet loss is in a certain, let's say, measurement. But if you just go on to web browsing, it's not that impactful, so you do not take care too much on that one. With our implementation of the IPCA, we guarantee that the quality of service, the packet loss, the jitter is working into the defined area. And as an example, when you move your mouse in a virtual desktop environment, it still feels like it is local, although because it's a virtual desktop, the mouse move is processed and generated back in the data center. Now, what you see here is you cannot switch from a normal enterprise campus architecture into a fully SDN type of environment, because you do not have the capability in the sense of that you send your users home for a while, upgrade all your network, and then start again. So what we provide here is a smooth capability to migrate from a current campus installation into an SDN type of environment. What we implement here is we have two planes. The traditional routing plane, everybody still knows with the different protocols you're using, and we put in an additional plane for communication. We call it extended plane, where we make sure that the right security, quality of service, and the like are managed. And via this plane, which is interfacing to the controller I've been mentioning before, the network controller in the SDN environment, we use and drive the extended plane, virtualize the infrastructure below, and the infrastructure below still works on a traditional routing plane and routing communication, what we already know so far. We provide with this an elastic and scalable and smooth migration capability into an SDN architecture. And by that, of course, what additional advantage you get out when you have the first step of an SDN aware or SDN light or SDN implementation in your infrastructure, it allows you to implement services to a quicker time frame. So the time to market on your services will go below the 6 months I've been outlining before in the first slides at the beginning of the presentation. I can't tell you if it will be 5 months, 4 months, or a couple of weeks only. That, of course, depends on the environment you're working in, on the scale of the network, and of the operations capability in your department. And the final one I want to show you is the product portfolio we are already using in a campus environment for providing the SDN devices on the way forward. So in the campus environment, it's driven out of the campus controller, which drives the switches and the access points and the like. In the data center, of course, the data center infrastructure is driven out of the cloud controller. Data center infrastructure in that area, we call it the cloud engine or the switches connecting the devices there. Of course, you need to have your storage and servers included into that type of environment too. And in the wide area network, it's going via the WAN controller, wide area networking controller, driving the virtualized devices in that area. They're mainly the routing devices. All of those three combining will provide you the SDN HL network solution, what we as a company can provide. And on the way forward, you will see that what you see here, separated controllers, they will merge into, let's say, one virtualized physical device in a reliable and, of course, redundant infrastructure on the way forward. With that, I say thank you for listening. As always, you can take further look into our products and solutions at Enterprise.